we have the pros and cons of the Budget MacBook. Welcome back to the channel. So as more details keep flowing out about this brand new Budget MacBook, I wanted to go ahead and kind of talk about some of the pros and cons. Okay, while these are still all just rumors, I think there's a lot of confidence in this right now. So I think we can talk about all the different pros and cons in this with a little bit clearer picture because there's a lot more information coming out. And I would put this at about an 85% chance of happening. Now, again, Apple could always change their plans, but I would just say, based on all the information I'm reading, about 85% that this is actually going to be a reality coming out soon. And we're also going to be talking about dates in this video as well, so stay tuned for that because there's some clearer dates also. Okay, so let's cover some of the pros and cons of this Budget MacBook, and then I'm also going to be covering things that could be a pro and a con at the same time, so you'll see those as well. But we're going to go through 10 of them right now. Let's get into them. All right, number one is a pro, and it's price. Now, with all the information coming out, I'm pretty confident that I'm going to be within $50 of this price, but what I'm going to guess right now is $649, and that's actually before the student discount. So the student discount is going to be another $100 off. So you'll probably be able to pick this up with the student discount for $549, or usually when it's on sale for around that price as well. Now, again, the full price will be $649 within $50. So I'm going to say $699. To about $649, somewhere in that range, somewhere it's going to be right in there. And I'm pretty confident in this price because I'll get into some other reasons later. But anyways, let's keep moving. Now, Apple's actually going after the student market with this brand new product. Now, if you look at some of the competition over here, like some of the more, I guess, top-level Chromebooks, if you call them that, like the Asus Chromebook Plus here, this is the CX34, you're going to see that the chip in here, this is an i5 1335U. Look at the price here, though, $529. So it's going to be right in this range. Obviously, it could be just a touch more, obviously, before the student discount, but I'm guessing it's going to maybe be $50 more than this after the student discount. And you're going to get a whole lot more in that actual Budget MacBook than you are going to be on this product right here. This product's not bad, but it kind of has a plastic design. It's going to have a 1080p screen. 8 gigs of RAM. You're going to get so much more with the MacBook, obviously. So this is what it's going to be competing against on price. So number one is price, and it's going to be a pro. All right, number two, it's a pro as well. It's the CPU or the chip. And it's actually going to be the A18 Pro that's been documented. So how fast is this A18 Pro? It's way faster than most people think. People are saying, oh, that's a cell phone and what have you. But take a look over here. So this is from nanoreview.net. This is Geekbench 6 scores. If you look over here, here's the M3. This is the iPad, but this is the M3 chip. Here's the A18 Pro chip. On single core scores, look at this. The A18 Pro is 18% faster than the M3, and that's basically going to be like the M3 Air as well. I mean, that's a lot faster, 18%. Now, multi-core is going to be slower, obviously. You can see over here, it's going to be a little bit slower, but still, that's the M3. The A18 Pro is definitely faster in multi-core than even the M1 chip, and maybe it's going to be somewhere around close to the M2 chip. But look how fast it is here in single core. That's pretty amazing, and that just goes to show you most people use single core, and that's going to be perfect for students. And again, on single core, it can even compete with the M4 chip. Take a look. This is Geekbench 6. Here's the M4 right here, and it's 3,670. Here's the A18 Pro, 3,582. So that's only 2% faster on single core. Obviously, it's going to be 49% faster on multi-core, but this is still a fast score for the A18. Look at this, 9,089, and it's not really competing there. This is going to be, again, for student work and for things like that, for quick tasks. It's just, it's as fast as the M4. It's right there, basically tied with it, 2% off. So you cannot complain on the CPU on this thing. It's going to be fast enough. And then also, remember we talked about that Chromebook it was competing against a couple of minutes ago? That Chromebook that was about $529. Well, look how this chip does against that chip right over here. So here's the Apple A18 Pro. In that Chromebook, it had the i5 1335U. So take a look at this. Here's the A18 Pro. It's ranked at 100% here, while this is only 64%. You can see the difference in speed here. Here's the Intel, basically Core i5 right there. And look how much slower it is. It's crazy. And even in multi-core, the A18 Pro beats it out right here versus the Intel Core i5. So if you're thinking this is going to be a performance slouch, you're wrong, actually. So it's a total pro on the chip, and it's going to be very power efficient, which we'll talk about. But overall, it's just a great chip. All right, number three, this is going to be a con this time, and it's going to be ports. This could be the one turnoff for a lot of people on the price here, even though the price is so low. It's going to be the ports. So what they're thinking is it could come with the MagSafe charging port, maybe, but it's only going to come with one USB-C port. And what they're thinking is not even going to be Thunderbolt. So it could possibly only be a 10 gigabit per second port. That's going to kind of make sure it's different than the MacBook Air. So while it's going to be fine for almost everything, you can connect external hard drives up to about 900 megabytes per second or 1,000 megabytes per second, but you're not going to get speeds of like 2 or 3 or 4,000 speeds on external drives and stuff like that. So this is not going to be really an editing machine. It's going to be more for schoolwork and a USB-C 10 gigabit per second port. And it's only going to have one of them. This is going to be the main kind of thing they're trying to make sure. A lot of people that want the Air aren't going to go for this. So Apple's pretty smart with this. Now, it could be Thunderbolt, but we're pretty confident that it's going to be one port for sure. And I think we're like 60, 70% confident that it's only going to be USB-C 10 gigabit per second. So post in the comments what you think about that. But I think it's definitely a con here. All right, number 4 is a Pro again, and it's going to be like we just talked about, battery life, all right? This thing's going to be super efficient. So I was reading in here, it said basically the iPhone Pro Max, it basically had a battery of around 18 watt hours, and the laptop it's going to be going into, we'll talk about that in a second, it's going to be somewhere in the 50s. So it's going to have about 3 times the battery as the iPhone. Obviously, there's going to be a bigger screen in there, but overall, the batteries, this could be the most efficient, the longest lasting battery in any laptop ever created. In fact, I'm 100% confident in that stat there. So this is going to be a really good battery laptop if you have a long time that you need to use it for. And what is that good for? It's going to be great for students. Students that have to sit around all day in class, that can't charge easily. That's what Apple's targeting here. And we could actually see 2 to 3 days of use on this thing because of this. Even with the bigger screen, if it's got that same battery, something like the MacBook Air, we're going to see 2 to 3 days. This is going to be over 30 hours easily. So this is going to be the battery king, and that's definitely a Pro. And then even more importantly, this could be 4 to 8 times more battery life than that Chromebook I showed you. So typical Chromebooks are going to get sometimes they get 3 or 5 or 6 hours. This thing could be well over 30 hours. Think about that for a second. So people, all these different schools and kids running out of battery in school, this is going to be the champ there. And again, this is what they're going for. And I think they're going to beat everybody out here, including any other laptop in history, with battery. Okay, number 5, it's a Pro. And it's going to be the actual design of the laptop, all right? What we think is they're going to be using the exact same design as the M4 MacBook Air. It's going to look exactly the same to save cost. Now, the main different factor is going to be the colors. And actually, this is a Pro again. So it's going to give you a whole bunch of different colors. We kind of talked about them before. I'll show you some examples of them as we're talking about it. And they're going to come out in all these different colors. I guess you could call this a con. I don't think they're going to actually ship in just normal MacBook colors, like normal silver, normal space blue, or not space blue, what do they call it, sky blue. It's not going to look anything like the Air. They're going to make it very colorful to make sure that people understand this is the cheaper MacBook, but it's going to have the exact same look and feel, I think, of the M4 Air. And that's just because they want to save money with it. So I think overall, though, I'm going to count that as a plus here, a Pro, because that's actually a really good design. I don't think they're going to go with like a plastic body or anything like that. I think they're just going to use the Air body. And overall, I think that's a positive and a plus for the actual design. I mean, think of all the 11th gen iPads out there with all the different colors. When the 12th gen iPads come out, I think there's going to be new colors, and these are going to be basically matching those colors. So they're going to and everyone knows that's going to be like the lower cost items out there from Apple, and that's what they're going to do. All right, number 6, this is a Pro as well. It's going to be resale value. So think about this for a second. We know this is already true. So when people buy very expensive Macs and stuff, MacBook Pros and $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 MacBook Pros, the resale values go way down after like, let's say 3 years. But with the cheaper products like the MacBook Airs and all the cheap products like with an M4 Mac Mini, the resale value is great because there's not a lot of room for them to go down. They only can go down a couple $100 versus off the cost you bought them for. So when we're talking $549, $649 for this device, after 3 years, it's still going to be selling for probably $399. So you'll be able to use these for 3 years and basically spend $150. So it's going to be kind of the king of resale value, I'm thinking, on this. And it's going to be a huge kind of selling point, right? So people that have never used Macs before, all these students that maybe are using Chromebooks can buy one of these things, test them out. They feel confident. If they don't want them, they can sell them for a very high price. But these things are not going to drop down to $100 or $50. They can't. And when they're going for $549, they're still going to sell for $399, and you're still going to have a great resale value no matter what, even 3, 4, 5 years into it. So that's what it's going to be king at as well, resale value. Okay, number 7 here is going to be a Pro and a con combined. And let me explain this, all right? And this is going to be RAM. So what we found out is on RAM, we found out that these chips, Apple, there's something in the code that shows that these computers here on this budget MacBook is going to be capable of 16 gigs of RAM. Now that's a Pro, right? Now the negative here is, will they also ship one with 8? And so I was thinking about this for a second. If they do come out with 8, which is the minimum you need for Apple Intelligence, would Apple even do this right now? Let's just assume that they did that. then they actually offered you to go upgrade to 16 gigs as well. That doesn't make a lot of sense because if it's, let's say it's $649 and you have to add $200 to go up, another up to 16, now you're in the MacBook Air range, right? You're going to be in that same cost where the MacBook Air just gives you 16 gigs of RAM. So I don't think they're going to be doing that. So I think there's going to be one of these two scenarios I'm going to go over in a second here, that it's going to have to be one of these two things that Apple's going to do. And you guys tell me which you think is more likely, and I'll tell you as well. All right, the first option is the base level comes with 8 gigs of RAM, but Apple's only going to charge $100 to go up to 16. They're going to cut it in half, basically. So you can get the base level one for $649. If you want 16 gigs instead of 8, you got to pay $749. That's one option, but this is the option I don't think they're going to do because it doesn't make a lot of sense for Apple unless they do that across the board on all of their kind of RAM upgrades, which they should, but I don't think that's as much likely as this next one. The second option I think that's going to happen with this is because I don't think Apple wants to ship anything with 8 gigs anymore. I think they're going to put 12 gigabytes of RAM in this for the first time. So you're going to get 12 gigabytes on the base level, and then you're going to pay $100 extra to go to 16. Those will be the only two options. Now keep in mind, one of the cons here is going to be that I think it's going to top out from everything I've read at 16. You're not going to be able to get 24 on this or 32. It's either going to be 12 or 16 or 8 and 16. I think that's what it's going to be on the budget one. So obviously, that's why I classify it as a pro and a con. But I think if it was actually 12 gigabytes of RAM and you could upgrade it for $100 to 16, I think that's a fair way to go. And actually, that's just my guess or from all the rumors I've been reading, but I think that's what they're going to do. Number 8, it's a pro and a con again. It's going to be the display size. All right, let me explain this for a second. So what Apple's going to most likely do from everything I've been reading is they're going to use the exact same display that's based off the M4 MacBook Air right now. And that's a positive, right? If you're spending only $649 or even less than that, and you're getting that display, it's a beautiful display. It's higher than 1080p. It's incredible, right, for that cost. And on top of it, if you think about it for a second, the Chromebooks and all those other things it's competing against, the low-end kind of, even Windows PCs, they're going to have 1080p. This thing's, a lot better than that. It's a way better screen. So that's a huge positive. And Apple's going to keep that 13-inch screen because it's way cheaper to do it. They already have it in production. They're just going to be using extra screens. Maybe they're the screens that aren't nearly, they're just not is up to the par of the Airs or something. I don't know, but we think they're going to use those screens. So what are some of the negatives here? Well, some of the negatives are going to be, a lot of people want 12 inches for traveling and stuff like that. But from everything I've been reading, they're not going to do that. The reason is because this is, again, targeted for students in schools and colleges. And they've maybe done some research and stuff, and they figured that 12 inches is just too small for that. Those kind of students want 13 inches, and that's who it's targeted for. All of the Chromebooks are generally 13 and higher, 13, 14 inches. So that's what they're going to do, I think. They're not going to go 12 for the people that want that, even though it would be great. So that could be a con if that's what you want. But overall, I think it's 13 for sure, and they're going to reuse that screen. The other con here is going to be, obviously, 60 hertz. They're going to be using the same 60 hertz screen as they have now. I think the MacBook Airs are going to go to 120 soon. Whether it's the next iteration or the iteration after that, they're going to separate these two models by that. So the Airs will have 120 hertz really quickly here, and these older systems, or not the older, so these cheaper systems are going to stay with the 60 hertz. That's going to, they have to have things that differentiate them between the two, models here. That's going to be one of them. The ports is going to be one of them. Obviously, the chips are a little bit slower, but this is going to be one that I think a lot of people, for people that just are using it for school, if they would have had a Chromebook, the screen's still way better, so they're not going to care that much, and Apple knows that. All right, number 9, it's a pro and con as well. And this is actually going to be the launch date. So hear me out for a second. Everything's pointing at these things coming out in spring of 2026. So obviously right off the bat, why is it a pro and why is it a con? It's a pro because for some people, this thing was never going to come, and it's coming in just maybe 6 months or so, or a little bit longer than that, somewhere in that range. So it's coming fairly soon. It's a con on the other sense that it's not going to probably be coming out with the M5s at the same time at the end of this year if they're actually coming out this year, but it's not going to be coming out with those. I think it's going to be slightly after that. And there's a reason why they're going to be doing it. They're going to be doing this because I think Apple's plan right now is they're going to ship all of the main products, like the Airs, the MacBook Pros, all that stuff, before they ship all their cheap stuff. And what are they doing for the cheap stuff? Well, they have a whole lineup of cheap stuff now, right? So what do we have? We have the iPhone 16e, which will be the 17e next. They're going to have that ship in the spring. They're going to have this cheap budget MacBook ship with that. So there's going to be 2 cheap products. They're going to have probably ship the Apple Watch SE3, which is the 3rd version of it, at the same time. So that's the 3rd product. And then they're going to ship the 12th generation iPad as well. So what they're going to do is all 4 of those products, with all the different colors and stuff, are going to ship in the spring. All the other Mac products, like the typical products like the Airs, the MacBooks, and the iPad Pros and iPad Airs and all that stuff, are going to ship a number of months before that. So Apple's smart. They know that everyone's going to see the new products come out, and most people can't wait. They want to buy those new products, and then 3 or 4 months later down the line, they're going to come out with those budget ones, and people will have to wait for those. And that's actually going to be their plan here, I think. And that's why I think this will be kind of seeding right in there with all the other products, and the colors are going to match, like I said, the iPads and stuff like that. All that kind of stuff. And who knows, like I said, maybe even the SE phone, not the SE phone, what is it called? I guess it's called that now, right? Or it's the E16E phone. It used to be the S. Anyways, maybe that's going to get colors too. We don't know. But all this stuff's changing. But the date, it's a pro and a con because it's coming faster than you think, but we're still going to have to wait past all the other products. Okay, number 10 now, the last one here, it's a pro and a con as well. And this is going to be the introduction of all these cheap products. And hear me out for a second. We've talked about this before on the channel. So it's a pro in the sense that Apple's finally getting their costs down on all these products. They're offering more reasonable price products, all right? Like I mentioned, the 16E phone, obviously $299 now for the 12th or for the 11th gen iPad, but you can get the 12th probably for the same cost. It's always on sale. Even the Airs and stuff. But still, this new MacBook, this obviously budget one's going to be really, really inexpensive. So we can look at that as a pro, obviously. That's going to be a pro. The con side of it, though, is a little bit more complicated. So is Apple dumbing down their hardware development? We talked about how right now services, the money that Apple makes from services is actually more than their iPads, than their MacBooks, than their wearables, all that stuff combined. All three of those categories combined is less money they make now than services. So when Apple starts doing this, I think they're becoming slowly less of a hardware company, and they're going to be maybe not concentrating on hardware as much, but they're going to be dumbing down the hardware to get the cost down. Maybe not as much as you think, but still enough where it might matter a little bit. And then they just want to get the masses in so they can actually make the money in the services. Obviously, that's where the money is now. And even worse, we had talked about this, is maybe they'll make eventually in the next 5 or 6 years, maybe they'll come out with really nice designs of hardware, but no guts inside. They'll be basically thin clients, right? Talking to AI servers, talking to their servers in the Apple cloud. And you basically are just renting the machine more or less. Maybe they'll just rent it to you on a per monthly basis. And all of your information, all your storage won't even be on the device. It'll be somewhere else in the cloud. That's what I don't like, right? They services, the writing's on the wall, that's where they're moving towards. So you guys tell me in the comments, what do you think about that? Am I onto something here, or you think I'm totally off? I'm just curious on your comments, but that's what I think. Okay, let's wrap this up. So at the end of the day, we might be getting a computer for $649, student discount $549 with all these different colors, and I'm actually excited about the colors. What I want to know is from you, post in the comments, is this a device you'll pick up even if you already have like a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro? Can you see yourself using this device for maybe traveling and stuff like that? Or is this really only for students? Will this only be for the student crowds out there? Because if you think about it, if you already have a MacBook Air, how does this slot in, right? You're not going to buy this, at least, unless you're like a super Apple fan. Let me know in the comments if you would pick one up if you already have a MacBook Air or a MacBook Pro. And if the price is at such a price where it doesn't really matter that much, it's still a lot of money. But for a lot of people, let's just be honest, they have nowadays $1,200 car payments. It's not that much either, and it's going to be a cool device. So in the comments, let me know what you guys think. We'll wrap this up. It's going on too long. I just wanted to give you some updates on the pros and cons and some new information coming out over the last couple, weeks here. We have a little bit more information to go off of. We will talk to you in the next one as we find out more. Take it easy. Peace.